We'll be getting started shortly, but the good news, everyone, is this is the last session of the day. So we want you to relax a bit. Feel free to take your shoes off, put your bag down, chill out a bit. It's good. You're amongst friends here. We're not going to be overly formal and, officious. Just chill out a bit.
Just a bit. Don't throw your shoes.
Just a bit, yeah. If you need to lie on the floor, that's okay too. I understand these things.
You just love showing off those socks.
They're great.
They're good socks. Don't get me wrong. They're really good socks.
Mine are better.
I'll do show. Oh, kitty cats. Are they bunnies?
I just have a sexy white
don't look
socks.
at look at my tattoo. It's really bad.
We're in the plain socks club. So we put our shoes still on.
So we can differentiate ourselves between plain socks and fancy socks.
Yeah, I left my NPM Wombat socks back at the hotel because they're really comfy, so I like to fly in those.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So
we need to get smart socks now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that every conference should have socks, honestly. Socks are way better swag than T-shirts.
Well, yeah, they're way easier to get home.
Yeah.
You just roll them up into a little tiny cylinder, and you always need more socks.
Socks I would definitely wear.
Yeah. I definitely need more socks.
T-shirts, I've got many.
Yeah.
I actually use them for the cat to sleep on.
Not to mention from a logistics issue, you only have to order 2 to 3 sizes of socks.
Yes.
To fit everybody,
Yeah.
right? Whereas with T-shirts and hoodies, you have to order all sorts of sizes for everybody, and it's the 2 to 3 sizes of socks exist.
Welcome to the socks panel.
Yes.
And if you do like connected socks, there's actually a couple of different ones at the moment that are doing the rounds. There's one that measures something to do with diabetes. I think it's circulation. There's also one that is, in very simple terms, gives you directions. So it's got a sensor in it, which obviously you remove when you wash them. But yeah, if you're walking around the city and you're a bit lost, it can tell you to go left or right if you've put into your little app which way you're going. So socks may be the future.
Yeah. Being able to remove electronics before laundry is something I've had to learn the hard way.
I've really had high hopes for the smart shoes, but they've just been such a long time coming, and even what they call the 4D printed ones have taken so long to go to market, above more than 100 pairs. I don't know if we'll ever get there. But socks, you never know.
Taking away T-shirts might mess up some people's packing, though. I always pack N-1 T-shirts for conferences, figuring I don't need one for every day.
What do you think, crew? Can we get started?
Yeah, works for me.
Also, isn't this a 30-minute one and not a 50-minute?
No, it's 50.
Oh, it is 50?
It is 50.
I can't count.
I have no problem doing 30.
Okay.
Well, we'll just go until we run out of questions.
Yeah.
More answers.
Yeah.
Okay, so
We'll probably run out of answers first.
you've probably gathered that we're here to talk about Node.js and IoT, Internet of Things. My name's Kate, and I'm going to be your lovely panel compere or chair or whatever term you like to use. A bit about me: I work at ReadWrite, which is as a freelancer. Basically, my job is as a technical journalist, and I write about wearables and connected devices every day. Probably the one I write about least is cars, because it's hotly contested, and there's a couple of staff members that love cars, so they always grab the cars before anyone else. But I have a lot of other interests. And just to sort of whet your appetite a bit about when we talk about IoT from my perspective, I had a little think today about what I've been working on, and I came up with 5 different articles I'm writing about at the moment. There's, let's see, I do my monthly hits and misses, the best and worst of IoT of the month. The hits are actually harder to find than the misses. Bone conduction in wearables seems to have had a bit of a renaissance, coming back to some connected devices. Smart cities, and I'm featuring Amsterdam since I'm here. It's a good chance to chat to people. I'm also looking at a woman in Philadelphia who is suing the maker of her connected dildo because she believed they were getting information from her that she did not wish to share. So there's a few issues there. So I think one of the wonderful things about IoT, if you have any interest in technology, there's always an entry point, and there's always something that'll whet your interest. Always something to be kind of excited or intrigued about. That's what I really like about it. But I just wanted to introduce our panel to everybody. If I start this way, Rachel, do you want to tell a bit
Sure.
about yourself?
My name is Rachel White. I am a tech evangelist at Microsoft. Previously, I was a software engineer at IBM Watson and Adobe Behance. I've been involved with NodeBots since JSConf 2014 when I saw Cass give a really great presentation. And then I went home and have been making stuff since then. I also do video game stuff and mostly a lot of things involving cats. So.
Very cool. Matteo?
So, I am Matteo Collina. I started getting interested in the Internet of Things and Node.js at this exact same time. That was 2011. We have Node.js version 0.4. And I started using Node.js and for Internet of Things project for my PhD thesis. So that's what I did. I started doing Node and IoT basically at the same time. Both of these are kind of my passion. And now I work for a company called nearForm. We do a lot of Node.js stuff. So here I am.
Awesome. I believe you've got a bit of an announcement today.
Oh, yes. I am also the maintainer of the MQTT.js library. This is a nice library that allows you to use this. MQTT, it's a protocol for publish-subscribe for the Internet of Things. It's very lightweight. It uses just 2 bytes of overhead. And it's being provided, it's a publish-subscribe thing. And brokers are available from IBM as one, AWS offers one, Azure offers one. There are several open source implementations. And today I'm pleased to announce version 2 of the MQTT.js library that I just pushed like 10 minutes ago from the ready room like when I was sitting next to Cass. And they were just there, let me do this. I need to do this before the panel. So I pressed the merge button, and it was all ready to go from a week. So this is now in the wild. It took some time. Just big announcement is faster, fix some old bugs, and so on. So yes, it's got us very used widespread in the real world. So like we got 700,000 downloads from the beginning of the year. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Pawel.
I am a web developer from Las Vegas, Nevada. I work for a small startup doing online polling called Wedgies. And I do a lot of hardware and robotics like as a hobby for fun time stuff, weird projects like space balloons and Delta robots and sumo bots and things like that. I actually credit JavaScript robotics for getting me into Node.js ever since I guess my coworkers all went to JSConf 2013 and came back of tales of node copters and sumo bots and vision tracking rocket launchers that would then shoot said node copters out of the sky. And then after hearing that, seeing some of the reports and videos and Typebot and stuff like that, I got around to learning a lot more Node than I had done previously, and planning a couple of International NodeBots Day events for Vegas. So that's kind of what I'm into.
Very cool.
I'm Cassandra. I'm a developer evangelist for Auth0, so I deal a lot with identity and authentication when I'm not doing robotics, though I find ways to kind of make robotics a tool for making learning about identity and security more interesting. For instance, I'm working on a demo that's going to sit at one of our booths that you write a JWT and it changes the color of the lights so that you're more interested in learning about JWTs because there's a robot sitting there. Huge proponent of education around robots. I wrote a book that came out almost a year ago now called Learning JavaScript Robotics. I've been involved in the NodeBots movement since 2013 when Raquel and Rick ran the JS workshop. And a year later, I showed up to JSConf 2014 in a light-up dress. And now I have over 12 different wearable, internet-connected pieces of light-up clothing. And yeah, that's me.
That's very cool. So when we talk about IoT, I mean, I guess it's such a diverse topic for so many people, and depending on where you sit in the spectrum and what you work on. And I guess I'm interested in what people's specific experience with IoT is. I know you've mentioned, for example, wearable clothing and robotics as well for you, Pawel. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that?
An IoT Node robotics project was actually my first foray into like Node or hardware. I decided that I was going to make an automated cat feeder because I had in my mind that all of these steps to get it connected sound easy, despite the fact that I'd never done hardware, I'd never done Node, and I wanted to. I'd just like written mostly vanilla JavaScript. So what I did was I used a particle photon, which is a Wi-Fi enabled microcontroller, and I drew on a piece of paper, this is what I'm gonna push a button, and then it's gonna make a servo turn, and it's gonna dispense food from this thing. And I was like, that's it, that sounds easy. Let's just do it. And then like lots of yelling and crying later, I finally got it working. And while I love IoT, it is the most pain in the ass thing to troubleshoot when you are demoing live. So, you know, I'm happy for anybody that does that professionally, because I cannot imagine the stress of having to do like consumer level IoT and get it to work. Like, I have some IoT devices, including a pet feeder that I did not make, and it probably works less than the one that I made work.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the frustration of actually getting things to work is definitely inherent in IoT. I know I watched someone trying to make pertaining to cats, a door opener and closer using a sensor so that their cat could go in and out of the door in the living room whenever they wanted to, instead of having to be opened and closed. And it just kept bugging and not working.
Was it letting dogs in instead?
No, sadly not. The cat would just sit on one side of the door and just not move. So it was just not quite working. So in the end, he did a bit of a creative cut and paste video and did the tutorial anyway, because he was like, I know it works. I just can't make it look like it's quite meant to look. Yeah. So, you know, a bit of creative license there.
I think
Cat
that's why,
on one side of the door, cut to cat on other side of the door.
Yeah, actually.
I think that's why a lot of IoT centers around cats, because they're both very finicky.
Yeah.
Like, they have the same success rate.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, dogs is a big one too. And I guess when we talk about, like, the pet feeder is a really good example. There was a pet feeder recently in the US that had a problem. It was for cats and dogs, this one, I've forgotten the name. But it was like a warning for what goes wrong with IoT, because what actually happened was that there was a malfunction with the servers. And the company sent around a Twitter message to everyone saying, hey, you'll need to make alternative arrangements if you're trying to feed your cat remotely for a few days. So you can imagine all these poor people on holidays.
That's a problem, though, because
It's a
that's the
significant
feeder
problem.
that I have.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's an IoT problem as much as it is a copyright protection problem,
right.
because there's no reason that if I set a schedule for this IoT device that it can't, you know this cycle that I'm feeding it. But they made it so that their like copyright protection with their device, it only works if you are connected to the internet. And
That's right.
that to me is like I can't think of the right word. It's like
Icky.
Yeah, icky. Like, I know whenever you start working at a new job, they always talk about trust. How can we get our customers to trust us? And there could have been like plenty of other things that they could have done to get this like proprietary
absolutely.
stuff to work.
Yeah.
But
Or just have it work in the home and have there as a default application, so that if other things didn't work, there was always a stand back,
Yeah.
The key problem in designing IoT applications most of the time is shift your thinking, and you need to think as offline first, really heavily. Like if you're building an IoT Internet of Things device, you need to think that device cannot have connectivity all the time, because it won't. And the problem that causes, it's very, very, this is hard, because it's one of the first thing is mental. You need to start thinking your problem the solution to your problems in a different way. You can't rely on the cloud to be available. like internet goes down, the light can fry, lightning can fry your router. I don't know. That happened to me. So
I feel like because it's such a new kind of discipline or a new type of technology that people just aren't used to making those types of considerations, especially with a lot of these projects coming out of things like Kickstarter, which are first-time people to hardware, first-time people to consumer products, things that come out of companies, I mean, even those things that come out of companies that are established in the space, like a Samsung or Philips or something, like still probably have those types of, I guess, lacking features, but it's much more likely in the kind of like indie hardware design space.
It's kind of a two-prong issue. Like so with the Kickstarters, you get like people who are in over their head, and they like make a ton of promises, and then like 2 years later, like they don't have everything they promised. And then you have these huge companies that are so used to everything being closed source, especially with hardware. Like open source hardware is so much younger than open source software. Like open source software is pretty easy to tell businesses like, yes, this can be financially viable for you, but like open source hardware, it's fairly recent that companies are starting to realize, oh wow, I can open source my hardware and I won't go bankrupt the next day. And so a lot of these bigger companies are like trying so desperately hard to not open source their hardware or their encoding or their transport protocols or whatever. And that's really what's hurting them in the long run, because you can't keep your schedule on your cat feeder, because then you might hack your cat feeder and figure out how they store your schedule, and somehow that would destroy the company that makes the pet feeder instead of the pet feeder not working for a week, and that would make you throw out the cat feeder. I think much like the open source software movement, the open source hardware movement kind of needs to reach that pitch where it's like, okay, we can open source our hardware or our protocol, and we're not going to go out of business overnight.
I don't know. I think they need that black box model to protect that proprietary cat feeding technology.
Yeah, because
how many kibbles and.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I think I think the other thing they really a lot of the hardware companies I talk to really struggle with, particularly those in the earlier days, is just scale. They can do a nice little prototype and maybe make 100 when you need to make 1,000 or 10,000. Trying to find a factory big enough, et cetera, getting the parts, building the molds, all that stuff.
FCC testing is a huge hurdle for a lot of Kickstarter projects.
And then if you're going into the health wearables, then of course you've got all your FDA issues for both the app and the actual wearable or the appliance that you're using. So it's really difficult. And from a journalist perspective, we rarely cover, or we've really stopped, most of us have stopped covering a lot of the Kickstarter campaigns because just so many of them don't go to market. It's just like setting people up to fail almost,
I think that the fact that there are so many more people getting involved in open source hardware is because of a lack of trust with the companies that are making all those things. Like, I love it whenever I see the projects about people making their own smart home stuff where they're building the APIs and the protocols to, like, when they come home, have their blinds open or do this other stuff. And it's always the people that are trying those things and pushing it further themselves that I think are furthering it for everyone else. And I think that's why I like it so much. It's super cyberpunk. And I'm like, let's do weird stuff.
Plus, those are the IoT campaigns I see are most likely to succeed, are the ones that are creating open source platforms. Particle, for instance, is a huge beacon of success.
It's a great company.
Yeah, they released 3 platforms now, and granted the Electron was late, but it still is exceeding expectations because it's open, because you can take it apart, what the protocols are that are underneath it. Tessel, for instance, as well. They're a nonprofit, but they're selling enough Tessels that they're on SparkFun, they're on Seed Studio. Like, you can get a hold of a Tessel pretty easily, and the chip, the BeagleBone, the Raspberry Pi, like open source platform Kickstarters, I think are much more likely to succeed because there's that level of trust, like what you're getting, like literally, figuratively, and otherwise. I think that helps.
Those are definitely open source, and I think it's kind of a lean because they're focused towards developers, but I don't know if I've seen sort of consumer-facing products go open source? I can't even think of one example.
Spiro has done
Spiro.
some more open source work.
API
and
stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they're much more consumer based, especially with like the BB-8 model. Because like kids, like that was like the Christmas thing.
It's really cool. There's a whole SDK that you can like interact with to make it do other dances. It's really cute if you haven't seen it.
Yeah,
It's very cool.
It's amazing. We at nearForm we use the Sphero APIs to teach Node.js streams.
Oh, really?
So it's don't worry. That's another usage of the stuff. But
Yeah, it's funny you say that because the health area is the one area where I've seen a lot of people that are become programmers or become involved in hardware and start their own smaller companies because they have their own problem they want to solve, whether it's their own health condition or a disability or a family member or what have you. And it's the one area where people are actually making something where they're thinking about the practicalities of applying it. Like a really basic example would be making a phone for a blind person or a visually impaired person. You might go, well, there's an app for that. I can just use that. But how do you get started when you're blind?
Yeah.
You've got to get started from scratch, from opening the phone from the box, you know? Really basic stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of people are cyborging themselves in different ways because we have a cyborg on stage.
I have an RFID chip in my hand.
Yeah, nice.
So.
Yeah.
And there's a huge movement huge in terms of like dozens of people that are hacking their own pancreases.
That's right.
They have diabetes and they've figured out the communications protocol from their blood sugar monitor, their insulin pump, and they've hacked together with a Raspberry Pi a way for the two to communicate so they can like regulate their blood sugar with this computer because devices like that aren't going to get through the FDA for another 4.5, 5 years.
That's right.
And they need these solutions now. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. And if you're interested in that side of things, I mean, I would encourage you to check out the biohacking conference that's on in is it? No, it's sorry, I'm just mental blank. It's in Scandinavia every year in November. I'll be going along this year on my way home to Australia, so I may go home with a little addition to one of my hands or something.
It doesn't hurt. It's not that bad.
I've been
As
waiting
I say,
for a
as I
while.
have a lot of tattoos.
I've heard it's no worse than getting like a facial piercing. So like,
They're very small.
Yeah, I mean, the way that they inject the RFID chips is with a syringe and it's a plunger and it's like that. The magnets, though, they have to slice you open.
yeah.
Is it the same kind of thing they use for like pet tracking?
It's exactly
Okay.
the same
It
thing.
is actually.
I love cats so much, I decided to get the same chip.
Just a general question for people that are here, and it's only a hand-raising one, so you don't have to do anything, don't worry. It's not one of those ones. Does anyone have any connected devices in their home? Yeah, well, still not many, you know, like, and this is the thing I see. I mean, I talk to some people in the States because, you know, they're in Silicon Valley and, you know, oh yes, I've got 200 of them in my home. Yet, where I live in Berlin, you've got, besides people into Raspberry Pi, there's not much. You know, the adoption is niche still.
That's the thing. I think a lot of people have connected devices in their homes and they don't think about it. Like if you have a Roomba, you have a connected device in your home.
Maybe I
If
should
you-
rephrase that, connected devices that are connected.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
no, but like, so like Alexa, Amazon's new voice system is extremely popular.
Oh, it's amazing.
And that's a connected device. I mean, we're getting more and more connected by the day to the point that we're not even thinking about it. Like, you know, I have my Apple devices and they all talk to each other, and then I have my self-hacked devices and they all talk to each other. But like, you know, sometimes you don't think about how many connected devices you might have in your home because they just become just like an everyday part of your life. So.
The Philips Hue and the Lifix, those are great, really popular. They all kind of hook into, I mean, like, I guess if this, and IFTT, or what is the other one, Zapier, something like that. Though I understand it's kind of hard to get into some of those platforms if you...
Also a great example of what not to do from a closed source perspective, because the Hue used to accept like all these different light bulbs, and their protocol was
that's
mostly
right.
open source, and then they decided to like close source it one day, and they modified the app so all the other third-party light bulbs wouldn't work anymore, and users were just rightfully super upset
But
because
there
now
is
they were
such a backlash to that. Yeah.
The problem is why we need standards and open protocols, industry standards, whatever it is. Okay, I'm just saying we need to. But the community is already happening. So the community is kind of solidifying in ways of connecting things together, and not changing it.
Yeah.
Is it Hypercat in the UK that's happening at the moment?
That is
Yeah.
a question.
Go for it.
Go for it.
Do you want to come and stand on the mic, just because we're a bit
Please.
deaf, that's all.
So yeah, okay, I guess it works. So my question is, with the advent of the internet, there was an era when there were a lot of proprietary network protocols, like if you remember, like IPX and Lantastic and all those, right? And in the end, the internet proved one thing, and that's the fact that open standards will eventually triumph, I suppose. Now we are faced with sort of I don't want to call it the second coming, but that's basically what it is with IoT, right? It's basically another internet that's popping up out there. And how much can we sell the perspective that the advent of the internet itself has offered to companies who are tempted to basically close down the protocols for their own short-sighted ends? You know, are we any better off having the perspective of the history of the internet in terms of starting out with open standards? Because I know there are standards bodies that cover IoT, right? Intel,
right.
the one I'm working for, is part of one, right? But still, you guys have a better perspective on IoT as a fledgling industry, and so what is your sense of what you're seeing out there? Are companies still short-sighted despite this excellent historical example, or are we actually heading on the right path sooner because of the precedents?
I think we are making all the same mistake all over again.
Yep.
We are just iterating faster because of the internet.
Yeah.
And publicly as well.
And publicly. That's the difference.
Yeah.
We are just making the same mistakes. All the first generation of IoT products were, oh, I have this nice light bulb, and I have this nice speaker. Now I want to connect to both. Have fun.
Yeah.
I think that there's so many conversations that need to take place in regards to like regulations or non-regulation of IoT, because you're dealing with, you know, people that are having it, so you can have things connected in your home, but companies may not be having the right security protocols, and so it's easily hackable for, you know, anybody to come in. I mean, all they're going to do is turn your lights on and off, but you don't want that. And then it's the same conversation as like net neutrality. If we don't have a wide open internet where people can have these connected devices, and companies are like creating tiers of internet, they're going to be able to control what we're trying to promote to be open and free for people to use. It's a deep conversation that has a lot of layers.
Yep. They could literally hold us ransom at some point. Like we were talking about, like internet-connected cars and medical devices. What if you get an internet-connected pacemaker, and all of a sudden the company that makes it just says, okay, you either buy this like $75 upgrade, or your pacemaker will fall out of service warranty.
They could paywall your heart.
Yep. Like they could paywall like
Literally.
organs of your body.
And it's also worth remembering with that, particularly the health devices, rumour and speculation does a lot. I mean, I read an article last week, published an article on the robotic heart that's been created in France, by Carmat. And even at that time, like the heart as yet is not been hacked because it's new. I mean, to preface it, when I say robotic heart, it's been tested by 4 people, and the actual, what they deem a success is someone who's lived more than 30 days with it. So these are end stage people. It's not like people that have, you know, walking around for 5 years. But conversely, there's been even people like Dick Cheney, one of the vice presidents in America, I think. He had one of his connected pacemaker devices decommissioned because he was worried people would hack it. So you're getting these people in power, feeding those kind of fears. And it's that and the baby monitors are the 2 big ones I hear about again and again when I talk to people.
Yeah.
People love this baby monitor story.
Well, there was also the big VTech hack recently, and it wasn't technically a device hack, it was a server hack, but like millions of children's names were leaked all over the internet, which, I'm sure, I'm not a parent, but I can imagine as a parent that would terrify me to know my kid's name was out on the internet somewhere because they had an internet-connected tablet and it wasn't properly connected. I mean...
Well,
I feel like medical and health will probably be the last thing to be open, because there's so much money tied up in it.
Independently of the field, a lot of companies that I've talked to in the hardware space trying to build new devices have some naivety regarding authorization, security. Like I was talking with some people. Oh well, you must have over-the-air software upgrades. This is one of the key features. If you're buying an IoT product, it needs to have over-the-air software updates. There is one reason for this. And if you're a Node developer doing some, you know how many OpenSSL fixes you get every month? Okay? So that's the security that keeps you safe. So you need to basically, if you're patching your Node.js once a month because of OpenSSL fixes, it's probably the same thing for your device. Now, is it updating itself? It's not updating itself. How do I know that when I buy a device? Is it part of some sort of, all of this is like, oh no, I'm just, when you plug it in, you updated it. And it's crazy, like it's something that I don't, it's something that terrifies me whenever I think about the industry or something like, oh well, I knew a company, I'm not saying the name, I knew a company that put a chip for, to attach a chip to cars.
Oh yeah, I know the story.
And they got this chip, and this chip didn't have over-the-air software upgrades.
Cars have some of the worst software bugs.
Like it was, you know, you have a problem now. You have sold 20,000 of those devices. They have a security vulnerability. How do you fix it?
They love dealer recalls, though. They love dealer recalls.
They don't, you know, but
it's an opportunity to upsell. You know?
Yeah, they love that. But
Well, it doesn't help that like web security has its issues. Like before we even get into IoT, like so for instance, if you played Pokemon Go when it came out, and you logged in with Google, if you're keen on the OAuth specification, you may have noticed the authorization screen saying, "I'd like to allow this app to use my Google account," didn't show up. They skipped it for you, so conveniently. For the record, please never do that if you're implementing OAuth. It's a really bad idea. But yeah, OAuth and our understanding of OAuth from an internet perspective, much less the niche of Internet of Things, needs to get a lot better before I even feel comfortable with like saying Internet of Things is ready for that kind of like level of standards. Because we've got people skipping OAuth or authorization screens for millions and millions of people already, and it's like we can't adhere to the standards we have now. Like we need to figure that out before we worry about like building even new standards. But the one thing I'm waiting to see is if the Apple AirPods use Bluetooth. Or some proprietary BS wireless connection. That's what I'm waiting for.
So that answers that.
I am guessing on the other side.
Yeah.
I'm not guessing on the nice side of the
Yeah, to be fair, I think if it was Bluetooth, they would have said Bluetooth already.
Yeah, well, the problem on that thing is the Bluetooth specifications and so on has been progressing so slowly because I don't know how many of you have ever looked at how big the Bluetooth specification is. It's a big book, physically.
And it's not a great read, not very thrilling.
Not very, no.
Tries it.
So at some point I worked on a project when I was in academia, and we were like to build this connector thing using Bluetooth. The way we made the Bluetooth chip doing what we needed to, we basically sit down there with a very good oscilloscope and look at what commands were being sent over the wires and replay those. Like, that was how we did our stuff, because we couldn't manage to write the command ourselves.
Implement the entire stack.
Yep.
No, we couldn't, and we just, after 2 weeks spent out trying to code it, we just said, well, this thing does what we need to. So instead of, let's hack it. instead of.
Well, but that's the thing. Like Apple has the resources to push the Bluetooth standard forward. Like, let's face it, they have the money that they could put a couple engineers on. Like, hey, maybe we could, push the Bluetooth standard forward a little faster. But they have most likely, it's all speculation at this point still, but instead they're going to create their own proprietary wireless that doesn't work with Bluetooth, doesn't work with anything else. And it's going to be
I'd
interesting.
like to think that the bigger companies that are contributing a lot to open source are probably going to help further that stuff more. And I'm not just saying that because I saw that Microsoft is the biggest contributor to GitHub today.
Well, to be fair, Microsoft's made huge strides, not just in IoT, but like in general in the past 2 years. Like they've made up for a lot of their reputation because they're starting to open source things and they recognize how the community works now. And instead of just being stubborn about it and being Microsoft, they're like, okay, we're going to work with them.
This is, well, regarding the Microsoft, I was like, for me, I grew up in an era of Microsoft being the bad guy. And I am like, so I can say I'm using Microsoft product right now every day or mostly a lot of the time. And I'm just like, okay, I really like this. Wow.
Yeah, it feels weird, right?
It
Like,
feels, it turns me, I recently played a little bit with some of the new Windows 10 stuff.
Anniversary update? Anniversary update?
And it was like,
Fix most things.
I mean, I'll admit freely, I use VS Code on my Mac. It's got the best JavaScript autocomplete that I've found so far.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
the VS Code on Mac is like really, really great software.
Sorry, I derailed. IoT.
yeah, IoT, sorry. But
I want to join the conversation. That's why I let it flow.
IoT.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I think we've talked about a lot of the challenges so far, and maybe one that we've not alluded to that much is the challenge of really running updates and keeping things connected. When we think about IoT, it's got to run automatically, securely, and without interruption. And an example I'll give that a company told me about that I was working on a story with, a company in Montreal, and they created sensor technology for fridges and freezers in hospitals. So basically it was where you keep the organs, you keep the vaccinations, you keep the blood, and so on. The reason they did this was that prior to their creation, if you like, the hospitals in Canada had been literally having someone go around to every fridge 3 times a day and check the temperatures. So it was to check the temperatures, and they had obviously an alert so that if the temperatures were not correct, someone could go and fix it in very plain English. And I said to them, well, okay, so you've got a server to do all this stuff. Has it ever gone down? And they said, oh, yes, once. And then we had to change and find someone else. So it made me pretty nervous when I was talking to them as a small company that they wanted me to promote. And I was like, that's tricky. So, you know, how do you think people can, manage these kinds of challenges?
Make sure you're using the right Node version, and you don't have to rely on NVM to change between different versions to get different types of proprietary CLI software for the different interfaces that you need for the different microcontrollers, not naming any names. I have to switch between a bunch of different versions to get different things working, and it's a pain.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, I think we rely on IoT a little too much on an industry scale, but we're not ready for it yet.
Yeah.
Like it's like we've been talking about how security is kind of a joke, and so like we're using it as a crutch, but the crutch is made of cardboard, so pretty quickly that crutch is going to fall out from underneath us.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
we're going to be worse off than we were before. I mean, and I think for collecting data and using data, IoT is pretty secure and pretty good. It's when you allow an IoT device to take an autonomous action, that's where a lot of people get concerned. So like the idea of fridges being able to like report what temperature they are, like that's fine. Like even if they do hack that, all they have is that data.
Yeah, exactly.
So as long as you're careful about what data you collect, like that's fairly reasonable on a consumer space. But it's when you allow an IoT device to make an autonomous action, that's when things get tricky and in a moral and ethical gray area and in a very big security gray area. Like it's yeah.
Are we asking for trouble trying to implement like serious bulletproof devices in a dynamically typed language where maybe the temperature will get set to nan or nil? Or is that?
This is actually a very nice point, because I think that one of the hardest challenge in the embedded software development community, it's the development stack. And it's basically stuck in the 80s, not even the 90s, like the 80s.
Wow.
So all the stuff, all the way we do software now with agile, short development cycles, unit testing. How do you unit test embedded software? I have a friend of mine, his job is to build a machine that you stick the chip in, will do the unit testing, like for airplanes or helicopters. Actually, he's working on a helicopter, airplane, whatever.
Hover.
A drone?
But yes, so those are the challenges, okay? And
Yeah.
all the development stack, it's not there. So this is where something like JavaScript and Node.js and even other languages, other platforms like Rust or whatever, like there is space for a disruption in that field. So I'm really thrilled by what this community is doing and what the other communities are doing, the open hardware community, how we are pushing forward new development environment for the Internet of Things, for building things in a very short time span, because we can like spend 6 months to build a new version of the software of a thing. Like we need to be able to squeeze it quickly, like, and do a software update over the air.
Yeah.
Like I'm stressing this because there was a DNS problem, a DNS hijacking thingy. You know, there's nice DNS attacks and a lot of things in the dot of chips. If you're connected over GSM, they have DNS IP address encoded in there. So have fun.
No man in the middle, and hopefully over-the-air updates that aren't likely to brick on internet loss or power loss, which just seems to happen all too often.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's another tricky part is like you can push over-the-air software updates all you want, but if you launch faulty hardware or you don't have enough hardware or it doesn't have the right processing power or you are just so out of luck.
Just release an overdrive chip that plugs in over the old processor.
Yeah, but
That's
like
all.
just getting users to install that is like you lose a huge amount of trust. Like if you ask a user a software update, that's something they deal with every day, and so they don't lose trust in you. But like if you tell them, look, we need to take your device back and send you a new one, it's much more inconvenient for them because they have to ship something. They have to like physically ship a thing, wait for it to come back, and then they're like, wait a minute, what was wrong with the old one? And like, especially when we're talking about cars, like they just had a recall of a car because like the brakes were internet capable, but I didn't think that's a sentence I'd be uttering because that's just such a terrifying thought. And so like it was in the hardware, like they couldn't just over the air patch the software to not allow the brakes to be accessible anymore. And it's like, so it's tricky with hardware because you can't over the air update your hardware. You have to like physically replace it, whereas with software, and I think that's
It's not like a software update.
it's so stressful. It's stressful to get the hardware right the first time.
We were talking about DEF CON earlier
Oh,
today.
yes.
There are all sorts of
Love
great
DEF CON.
talks. I think 2 years ago there was one about taking over a Jeep's autopilot by giving it faulty GPS signals, and there are all sorts. I think that was not a Jeep, but there's another one about a Jeep, just like a software, HTTP intercept, man-in-the-middle attack or something to just totally disable it while you're driving. There's a lot of scary stuff.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, well, I've literally seen firmwares where there was a key. They used symmetric because they couldn't run RSA, so they were running just AES, and with the secret embedded inside the firmware.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
DVD players.
I've also seen remote unlock cars be able to be intercepted.
really
If somebody's
easy.
in the like area, they can capture that frequency that it's going at, and as soon as somebody's gone, walk up and
Just to
unlock it.
clarify, I've disabled it from my car.
Yeah.
Literally.
So don't try anything.
I have one of those new dongles that you can keep in your pocket. And I've disabled it. It has also the buttons, but I've disabled them because you can disable it from the UI. And I just said, no, don't worry. I don't want that. I just want to be physically connected to my door
And that's just even before you get into things like we were just alluding to earlier, the number of connected devices people will own in their homes and workplaces. You know, most people are, unfortunately, are going to use the same email address and probably the same password for everything. Let alone, you know, think of using a password storage manager.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think most of the security issues as well harken back to like part of why the DIY robotics movement is so important, because it brings so many perspectives to the table that may not be considered by larger companies. For instance, I would never want my car doors to unlock the second I get near my car, because what if someone follows me to my car?
Yeah.
And as someone who's perceived to be a cis woman, like I'm genderqueer, but people perceive me as a cis woman, and a lot of cis women have that issue. Like you could get followed to your car. And if your car automatically unlocks itself when you get nearby, that person could just decide they want to get in the passenger seat with you, and you really have no recourse at that point. And so like that's why the DIY movement's so important, is because it brings those perspectives to the table. When we educate people who wouldn't normally get a say at large companies,
absolutely,
they can bring those perspectives to the table, and maybe we think about all of the possible problems that could arise from a specific UI instead of just the problems that we as like a single person would face. Like, for instance, phones for blind people. I wouldn't think of that because I'm not blind, right? So like when we bring more people into the table with the DIY movement, we bring more problems to light and more possible solutions at the same time. It's really interesting the way you learn to think about problems when all of a sudden it isn't, you know, just you. It's you build something and someone's like, well, I really like it, but I can't move my leg that way, so this fitness band that goes around my thigh wouldn't work right. And so, yeah, it's interesting. The DIY movement's bringing a lot of things to light.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, probably the only really exciting kind of car story I've done, because as I said, I don't do a lot of cars, was with a designer who's done lots of designs for Google and a bunch of other people, who was creating a car for people with paralysis from the neck down, with the notion that eventually the car would be able to very, very slowly and gradually take over a lot of the, would be able to be, you know, firstly an autonomous car, but then through movement and brain-computer interface, the driver, he or she, would be able to take over some of those functions. It might start with changing the radio station, and then very gradually move on to other, you know, things you do in a car. Really exciting stuff, and very thoughtful, and about, you know, saying people want to not be just passengers. People want to be active participants in the driving experience, if they like driving or whatever. I know we've got just a few minutes left, so did anyone have any questions they wanted to ask, or comments or something? Please feel free to hang around with us afterwards and join in some conversations or what have you. We'll be out there somewhere, I suppose. Assuming there's something on next, I think. No? And has anyone got anything they're working on or anything coming up that they'd like to promote to the audience? Please feel free.
If you're interested in getting into NodeBots, definitely Node School has a unit on NodeBots. It's in June, so it'll take a little bit, but if for some reason you're just like super busy until June, or July rather, NodeBots Day is an international event, and so there's probably an event in your city, and if there isn't, it's really easy to start one. And that's how most of us got started with hardware, was either at a Node.js like event, or like a NodeBots event at a conference, or a NodeBots Day event in their city. So,
cool.
You know, if you're interested in getting involved and like you learn a bunch and then you want to get more people involved, that's a good way to get moving
And if you can't wait for NodeBots Day, I believe Cassandra has written a book about JavaScript
Oh,
robotics
yes, I think there's
as well.
a book, yes.
Yep.
Maybe you could bring along a copy tomorrow for people.
I actually don't have any copies on me.
It's sold out.
Sold out book.
No, I had to pack for 3 weeks straight, so I had to pack there officially. Plus, I actually don't own a copy of my own book. I don't. It's weird. I feel weird talking about my book.
Okay.
Yeah, but it.
That's why I did it for you. Sorry.
Yeah, it's
We can
fine.
talk about it for you, though.
It's
We don't
fine.
mind.
It's just called Learning JavaScript Robotics, and it does get you started with Johnny 5 and NodeBots.
Sounds great.
I mean, I haven't gotten a terribly lot of complaints about it being technically inaccurate, so I guess there's that.
It's a good start.
So yeah.
And then Francis and Rick have been working hard on the, what is the Java Johnny 5 Inventors Kit that's on Spark Fun.
Yep. No, it's got
It's
a
Tesla
ton of
2 powered, and it's got like Kit and lessons. Seems pretty cool.
Yeah. It pretty much has everything you need to get started with Johnny 5 and Tussle in a little kit.
I've got to love a kid.
It was on back order last I checked, but then I alerted Rick, and he's like, it should never be on back order. And he's apparently working on that. I don't know what he meant by that, but...
That sounds like
It's
a Rick
Christmas
thing.
presents.
There is one more thing to say. All of this is open source
Yes.
on GitHub and NPM. And a nice way to get started and be part of this movement is just to hang around, talk with people, ask them, oh, can I do something? Can I help this project? This project is really nice. We need more help because a lot of most of the work that all of us did, we started doing it in our spare time. We started all of us doing this way. None of us is part of our job most of the time. Absolutely not for me, not for her.
Not for any of us here, I
Yeah.
think.
So,
I mean, me,
so
yes.
basically, we all started all of this, and we maintain all this stuff in our own time.
Yeah,
So please, like, hang around. We need more maintainers. We need more maintainers for my library and JS. We need more maintainers for Johnny 5. We need more maintainers for Node serial port. We need more maintainers for anything, guys.
We need new libraries.
Yeah.
We need new libraries.
Yeah, we need new ideas.
I'd
and
also
perspectives.
say to people thinking of, oh yeah, I could help out, but I'm not sure, like, you don't know what you could do till you give it a try.
Yeah.
You've got a community of people that can help you. I often notice with tech stuff, there's often this idea that you've got to be a certain type of person or have a certain level of skill to help out. It's not true. There are people that are there to support you and resource you, and they will get you started and guide you along as well.
Raise your hand if you're on the stage and you have any formal electronic training whatsoever.
Yeah.
I technically have 2 weeks of an electrical engineering
I
course,
did,
but that just started.
did.
So
If you've never done any Node hardware and you're curious how easy it is exactly, my talk tomorrow is exactly about that. And I have 4 hardware demos that I'm doing in 20 minutes. So
excited.
it'll be a really good primer on how easy it
I might
is.
actually stand next to the stage and hand
Good
you
luck.
stuff so that you, yeah, right.
None of it's IoT, though.
I couldn't get 2 to work. So I can, like,
I hope the demo gods are with you.
Yes.
it's a lot of luck getting hardware demos to work.
Does the talk actually feature you screaming at Arduinos as
Yes.
well? Okay.
Yeah. I will yell at an Arduino.
Is there a cat involved?
Not this time. Unless I add one later.
Come back for next year's talk
We should
meowing
find
at
the one
Arduinos.
with that friend cat you made on the street the other day. and
I
just
make
bring
friends
them
with every cat.
in. Well, yeah, but like maybe one will follow you in tomorrow.
Yeah. Live cat demos.
Yeah. So look, thanks everyone for coming along and sticking with us. We know it's been a long day, and you're probably dying to get a drink or something. So we understand these dilemmas. But thank you, and yeah, feel free to catch up with any of us. And if I can just self-promote, given my role here, if anyone's got something sort of newsworthy about IoT that they think, oh, Kate could write about that and get it published, just come and see me anytime. I'll be here tomorrow as well, and we'll have a chat and see what we can work on together. That's how I like getting stories. I learn from you guys. You guys are my inspiration, you know. That's how I get good stories. It's not just PR people pitching at me all the time. Well, it is, but I prefer talking to normal people. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.